Hello, this is Gwendolyn Brown, and I wanted to do a video presentation in regards to major scales, tetrachords, the key signatures, and the circle of fifths. I feel that I didn't explain this very clearly, and I wanted to have the opportunity to try to explain this to you again. And I also did create a quick guide of everything that we have worked on so far in class. You can download this quick guide from Canvas, and it's in the Files folder, and it's entitled Essentials of Music Theory Quick Handout, Unit 1. I am calling everything that I have worked on so far in itself one group unit, which is Unit 1. Um, in the book, basically, it goes through everything in what they call Book 1 and Book 2. By the time you get your book, we would technically be almost done with what they are calling Book 2 in the textbook. This quick handout should help you out until the textbooks come in. But I want to spend the time and do a video explanation of major scales, tetrachords, as well as the key signatures and the circle of fifths. So if you've downloaded the quick handout, you can follow along with me. So we're going to first talk about major scales, and we're going to talk about how they are derived. A major scale is built on two tetrachords. Now the word tetra means four, so a tetrachord is a series of four notes having a pattern of whole step, half step. The four notes of a tetrachord must be in alphabetical order. So if you remember what we've talked about when you are constructing any type of scale, you would construct it in alphabetical order. For example, C major, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So this is done in alphabetical order. So the pattern for a tetrachord for a major scale is whole step, half step. So obviously for a major scale you would need 8 tones, so you would need 2 tetrachords. And each tetrachord is whole step, half step, whole step, half step. So the tetrachord for a major scale starts with whole step, half step, and the second tetrachord is again whole step, half step. These two tetrachords are connected by a whole step. Thus makes this a major scale. Whole step, half step, whole step, half step. All right? Look at C major here. I'm skipping a little bit. Look at C major here on the keyboard. And you notice whole step, half step. And here's the whole step that puts these two tetrachords together. The first tetrachord is C, D, E, and F. The second tetrachord is G, A, B, C. And by the way, tetrachords can be ascending as well as descending. So C, D, E, and F, whole step, half step. G, A, B, C, whole step, half step. The connecting of these two tetrachords is the whole step itself. And that's how we get our pattern. As you can see, the degrees or notes of a major scale are identified by letters, and the key notes are the beginning and the end of the scale. C is the keynote, as well as the end C. And the keynote tells you simply what scale it is. So this is a C major scale. Now you have the knowledge to build any major scale in any key. So I would advise you in your own spare time to go to a piano or use your piano app and construct your own major keys without doing an internet search or going to any of the handouts that I've given prior. Just as you can create all of these things on your own in your head, and it makes better sense to you. I'm going to skip intervals since I believe that we've done pretty good with that. I'm going to go straight to key signatures. All right. Now, Wiki tells us that there are several combinations of sharps and flats, any combination rather of sharps and flats, after the clef at the beginning of each staff indicates the key signature of a composition. We're going to deal with major scales and major keys. So let's look at sharp keys. Understand that no sharps and no flats is the key of C, and therefore that is our default. And again, we go back to these tetrachords. This tetrachord thing is very important. All right. So now we're going to look at the sharp keys. I'm going to go to the circle of fifths that we have here. I'm going to go back to it from time to time. This circle of fifths is also in your presentation. And I know the circle of fifths seem a bit daunting, but really it isn't. And by the way, we're not going to worry about this green stuff in the middle right now. Those are minor keys, and we will deal with that in class a little bit later. We're going to deal with the major keys. So we're going to deal with the sharps. The sharps on the circle of fifths, as you know, is on the right side. And all you do is count to 5 from the letter you left to the next letter, and you will see that it is the next key, which is G. Let's now go to my handout. No sharps, no flats in the key of G. Now, one sharp on the staff is the key, I'm sorry, in the key of C, that is. No sharps, no flats in the key of C. One sharp on the staff is the key of G. So the first sharp is the key of G. Now remember, I told you in class you just have to know this, but really, since I did not really explain tetrachords the way I should have, there is a hint. I want you to look at the tetrachord in C major. The beginning of the next tetrachord tells you what key you are in. So we're going to use the ascending tetrachord pattern here. C, D, E, F. The next tetrachord is G. And therefore, that tells you that the next scale that we should deal with is going to be a G major scale. So taking that G major scale, G, A, B, C. That's our first tetrachord. D, E, F sharp, G. Because remember, we need to have a half step between the last two notes of the scale. So this is why it's not F, but F sharp. And therefore, it is F sharp, G. So if you now know how to set up a major scale, you can use the tetrachord system to not only set up your major scale, but also get the key of the next piece. So let's go back to C major. C, D, E, F, G. That's our first tetrachord. Imagine an imaginary measure line here. The next tetrachord begins the next key that is sharp, G, A, B, C. Again, we're using an ascending tetrachord. And note that when I say the word ascending and descending, it does mean something here. So this is an ascending, two sets of tetrachords. The next set of tetrachord is G. G is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth letter in the scale of G. Therefore, this is our next tetrachord. Going back to the circle of fifths, this is our first sharp in the circle of fifths. So now we're at G, and we build the major scale. As you can see, as we build the major scale, the whole step before the last half step makes it an F, makes F an F sharp, and that now F sharp is the key signature, and it is the first sharp. Now, if you notice G major, first tetrachord is G, A, B, C. The second tetrachord starts with a D, and therefore it is our next key in the key of sharps. And is also the fifth letter in the G major scale. Going back to the circle of fifths, there it is. So our next key in sharps is the key of D, which has 2 sharps. Going back to the key of D, we build our next two. We build now again a major scale. Whole step. E to F sharp is our whole step. F sharp to G is the half step. The next tetrachord is connected by a whole step, G to A. A to B, B to C sharp, because this has to be a whole step, and C sharp to D, because this has to be a half step. And that's our major scale in the key of D. D to E, E to F sharp to G, G to A to B, B to C sharp to D. And as you notice, we have two flats here, and that's our key of D. All right, so without me rolling down to the next one, and don't glimpse down right quickly, I want you to look at the scale, and I want you to find the second tetrachord, and thus tells you the next key in the circle of fifths on the sharps side. And that key would have 3 sharps. It is also the 5th letter from here, or the 1st letter in the next tetrachord sequence. Here we are, A major. And therefore, going back to the circle of fifths, here it is A major. And it has 3 sharps. And following the sequence of making a major scale, here's the scale in the key of A. So, now that you know how to build the sharp keys based on the ascending tetrachords, these are the remaining, and you can look at those on your sheets. And it follows the circle of fifths, C, G, D, A, E, B, and an F sharp. And the reason why this is F sharp, as you all well know, is simply because F sharp is already in the key signature, and therefore the key itself corresponds to the key signature itself in order to name the key. All right. Now we're going to do the flats. And on the circle of fifths, the flats is on the left-hand side. All right. Now I told you the circle of fifths, you go around and you just count to 5 and you get all the way around here. But there's other ways of denoting the flats on the left-hand side. And using the tetrachord system is going to help out. Now, for the flats, you're going to actually use the descending tetrachord. Now, I just put this right here so that you can see what the descending tetrachord pattern looks like. Again, this is C major. So the first tetrachord descending, C, B, A, G. So therefore, we're going to go backwards in the letters. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. We're going to go backwards. So going backwards, descending, C, B, A, G. The second tetrachord starts with the letter F. And in a descending tetrachord, starting from C major, again, everything starts from C major. Starting from C major, we now get to the key of F, which is, of course, the 5th scale from G to F. And F is the first letter in the second set of tetrachord descending, and therefore is the first flat scale. Remember I told you you quote-unquote had to know it? Well, now you don't necessarily quote-unquote have to quote-unquote know it. You can simply look at the C major scale and now descend. First tetrachord and the first letter of the second tetrachord descending is your key, and that's F. And here's our F major scale. Building the F major scale, whole step, whole step. Here's the half step. A to B flat is a half step. B flat to C is a whole step. And that's the whole step that puts these two scales together. Whole step, half step. All right. Now that you know that that's that whole step here, that tells you also that the B must be flat and therefore is in the key signature. Now, for the second key, I want you to go to the top F right here. Okay? And just use these graphics descending. was kind of difficult to continue to find descending scales already in a descending pattern, so just basically start from the top here. Now, you're going to find the next descending tetrachord, F, going backwards, E, D, C. The next tetrachord begins with a B flat, and that tells you our key. All right? It tells you that B flat is the key, not B, because again, the flat is on here, and the flat tells us this type of B is a B flat. And by the way, I will mark off if you write a letter down, and that letter should have a sharp or flat right next to it, and you didn't pay attention to the key signature. So do pay attention to the key signature when you are writing these major scales. So here's the B flat, and that's our next key, our next descending key on the circle of fifths. And you can tell right here, there it is, and it has two flats. B flat, C, which is a whole step, to D, which is a whole step, to E flat. That's that half step that's required in the major scale. E flat, F, G, A, B. E flat to F is a whole step, F to G is a whole step, G to A is a whole step, A to B flat is that half step that's required for the major scale. All right, let's do one more. Start from here, this B flat, go to the descending tetrachords, going backwards, B, A, G, F. The next scale would be E flat major, and it would have three flats. So therefore, our next scale is E flat major, E to F is a whole step, F to G, a whole step, G to A flat is a half step, and that's our third flat, and therefore it goes into the key signature. A flat to B flat, whole step, which the whole step puts together these two tetrachords. B flat to C, C to D, and our half step, D to E flat. Now you know how to find the flats on the circle of fifths by way of descending tetrachords. Then start from this top E flat, find your next tetrachord. Find your next descending tetrachord. Remember, tetrachords are four, so 1, 2, 3, 4. The fifth one, or the first one of the next set of tetrachord, is your key. There's A flat, and as you can see, A flat major has four flats. A flat, B flat, D flat, E flat. See? And that, of course, corresponds with our circle of fifths. Should be easy, right? And it is. And again, we now get to G flat major, etc. Almost every note is flat until we get to C flat major, which every note is flat. All right? So here's our circle of fifths, and I'm going to pull up the one here. And that's how we find out that's how we derived the circle of fifths. On the sharp side, we go to the second tetrachord, the first note of the ascending tetrachord, or the fifth value of the scale, is the key for the next key. And when we follow the whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step pattern, when we follow the pattern, we have our major scale. And on the flat side, we follow the descending tetrachord, which is 5 notes going downward, and that gives us our flats on this side. Now you see why it's called the circle of fifths. Ascending tetrachord pattern is the sharps. Descending tetrachord pattern is the flats. And therefore you see that is 5 sharps up, descending 5 notes down. So the flats are descending 5 degrees, and the sharps are ascending 5 degrees. And therefore, that's why we call this the circle of fifths. Now you notice there's some inharmonic key values here at the bottom of the circle of fifths. And therefore, if it is all sharps in the key signature, this will be B sharp. But if you see all flats in the key signature, you see all flats in the same harmonic key signature, because C flat and B are in harmonic to one another. Therefore, you don't call this the key of B because you see all flats in the key signature. You would call this the key of C flat. Subsequently, you don't call this the key of C flat because you see all the sharps in the key signature. You would call this the key of B. And if you notice on the keyboard, I'm going to pull up a keyboard here, B and C flat, which is 1/2 step, is the same key. So therefore, for the circle of fifths, because they're inharmonic, they would also have an inharmonic key signature. G flat and F sharp are the same key, are the same pitch rather. So G flat, which is G here, G flat. As you can see, it says also F sharp, F sharp, G flat or F sharp. So in the circle of fifths, it would also be inharmonic. But if you have all flats here, you would not call this F sharp. You would call it G flat. And if you have all sharps in the key signature, you would not call it G flat. You would call it F sharp. Same thing happens here. You can pretty much put logic together, and so it goes here. So here's our circle of fifths. So now you understand how the circle of fifths really are derived. They're derived from tetrachord system, tetrachord pattern, forgive me. So again, here's the tetrachord. First tetrachord, which is basically whole step, half step. The second tetrachord, whole step, half step. And these two tetrachords are put together by a whole step. Thus the pattern, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, which is our major scale. Now, there is a way of understanding the placement of the sharps and flats. Again, we're going to start with C major and go clockwise. Now, count 5 notes starting from C, and you get to the key of G. Remember what I said about tetrachords? Well, here's how it makes more sense. The second ascending tetrachord in C major starts with G, which is the next key on the circle of fifths, and is 5 notes from C. Now, from C, count 5 notes, and you'll get to the key of D. The second ascending tetrachord starts with on D, 5 notes from G, and thus is the next key in the circle of fifths. And you keep going around, and you have built the circle of fifths on the sharp side. And on the flat side, as a descending tetrachord, 5 notes down. And from C, 5 notes down to the second descending tetrachord lands on F. So forth and so on. Now you got it. Okay? The placement of sharps and flats. Believe it or not, there is a method of placing the sharps and flats. You can always remember mnemonic devices, but here's the way to do this based on the tetrachords and the circle of fifths. Always remember that the key of C has no sharps and no flats. Looking at the sharps going on the right side of the circle of fifths, remember how you got the key? Look at the letter of the key. You will place a sharp on the letter before the letter of the key. So I'm going to go to the circle of fifths. Here is the key of G. The letter before G is F, and therefore the F on the staff will get the sharp in the key signature. Thus, Y, G has one sharp, and that sharp is F. Go to the next key, which is D as in David. The letter D, the letter that comes before letter D, is the letter C. And it is the second sharp in the key signature, C sharp. Go to the next key, which is the key of A. Remember the tetrachord, D, E, F, G, A. A is the first letter of the second tetrachord, and therefore is our key. Now, in order to place the sharp correctly here, simply go to its letter prior to A, which is G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And therefore, it gets it here. So again, let's start it again. C major, five notes up is G. The letter before G is F, and therefore that's where we place the sharp. 5 steps up to D, which is our next key in the circle of fifths. Its letter before it is a C, A, B, C, D, C. Therefore, the sharp goes on C. The next key is A, D, E, F, G, A, 5 steps up. The letter prior to A is G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Therefore, G, that's where the sharp goes. Next one is E. So can you guess the sharp placement and how we got it? How we get it? That's right. The letter before E is D. That was like a Sesame Street moment there. The letter before the letter E is the letter D, and therefore that gets the fourth sharp. The next one in our key of sharps is B. E, F, G, A, B. B is the first note of the second tetrachord, or the fifth scale degree from B, from E ascending. So this is B. The letter before B is A. So therefore we have A on the sharp. The next key is F sharp. Don't mind the sharp right now, but we know this is the key of F sharp. The letter before F sharp is G. I'm sorry, the letter before F sharp is E. All right? I got myself carried away here. The letter before F sharp is E, and therefore E goes on the staff. Now you know how we get the sharps onto the order of sharps in the key signature on the sharp side of the circle of fifths. All right? Now, look at the flats and look at the letter of the key. Again, C has no sharps and no flats. So the next key, of course, is F, 5 degrees descending from C. Okay? Now, go up 4 letters of that scale. That's F. Let's go to F major. Go up 4 letters of that scale. F, G, A, B. Just simply go up 4 letters. Okay? F, G, A, B. That tells us, therefore, the flat, where it goes onto the staff. So just simply count to 4 on the flat side and simply go back 1 letter on the sharp side. And that tells you the placement of the sharp or flat. So back on the flats here, from F, we go F, G, A, B. Therefore, we put a flat on the line, in this case the treble line, that gives us the letter for B, and that's where it goes. The next key in the circle of fifths, going 5 letters back from F, is B. Go up 4 letters from B flat, B, C, D, E. And that tells us that it goes right here on E. 5 degrees down, 5 steps downward, descending from B flat gives us the key of E flat. From E flat, simply go up 4 steps, 4-letter steps, E, F, G, A. And that tells us that A gets the flat on the staff. And therefore, 3 flats in the key of E flat. 5 degrees downward gets us to the key of A flat. 4 steps from A, B, C, D tells us that D gets the staff, gets the flat on the staff. 5 degrees down from A flat is the key of D flat. 4 steps up from D, D, E, F, G. Therefore, G gets the flat. Notice G is now getting the flat, and therefore it's the fifth flat in this, the fifth flat, and therefore that's 5 flats for D flat. 5 degrees down gets us to the key of G flat. 4 steps from G, G, A, B, C. Therefore, we place the flat on C. Got it? So now you know how to place the flats and sharps on the staff correctly. The sharps, one more time. Go to the key in the circle of fifths, 5 steps from C. Then go 1 letter backwards, and that's where you place the sharp. And then go 5 degrees around that way based on from the last letter. From this one, descending from C, 5 letters down gets us to F. And from that letter, just count up to 4. F, G, A, B. And that's where you get the flat, B flat. All right? Now, if you want to learn mnemonic devices, here's a couple that I found on the internet. Father Charles goes down and ends battle. F, C, G, D, A, E, B. And that's where you place the sharps in order. And the flats in order. Battle ends and down goes Charles' father. B, E, A, D, G, C, F. Wait a minute, do you notice something here? The sharps placements and the flats placements. The flat placements are in opposite order of the sharp placements. The last sharp on the staff is going to be a B sharp, therefore that makes this a B flat. E sharp, E flat, A sharp, A flat, D sharp, D flat, G sharp, G flat, C sharp, C flat, F sharp, F flat. There you go. Now you see how to not only get the sharps and flats, get the keys for the sharps and the keys for the flats. You also know how to place the sharps and flats on the staff that corresponds to its key. And here we are back to the circle of fifths. And I hope now that the circle of fifths is making more sense. So re-listen to this video more and more to really get a sense of the sharps and flats. If you understand the tetrachords, 4 notes, whole step, half step, whole step, half step, and how we get the key, on the sharp, we go up 1, 2, 3, 4 to the first note of the second tetrachord. That tells us the next key. And from that next key, we go up to the next tetrachord, which in this case would be D. So forth and so on. So from C to G, from G to D, so forth and so on. So we go ascending for the sharps. For the flats, we simply descend to the next tetrachord. And notice that's F, which is the next key on the circle of fifths. So all you got to do is simply write a scale, making sure that you follow that scale correctly as a major scale. Remember, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step. Now you understand there's a whole step in between the whole step, half step pattern. And therefore the whole step, half step is a tetrachord. Whole step, half step is the second tetrachord. And the whole step in between brings 2 tetrachords together. Alright, so now that you understand tetrachords, you can now build a major scale. And from that major scale, put together your key signature, and its placement on the circle of fifths. Study the circle of fifths. Don't worry about this in the middle again. These are minor keys, and we'll worry about that later. Just basically, when I give you a test with the circle of fifths, all I am going to want is the letters that denotes the key, correctly symbolized. And I'm going to want the staff mark, and then treble staff will do. If you want to do bass staff as well, that's fine, but treble staff will do. The placement of where the sharps and flats go in its corresponding key. So you don't necessarily have to quote-unquote memorize the circle of fifths. All you have to do is follow the tetrachord pattern. From here, go to the fifth note of the major scale, which is the first note of the second tetrachord. Descending, go down to the fifth note of the scale, or the first note of a descending tetrachord. And if you've written your major scale out correctly, following the pattern that we know, you should be able to build the circle of fifths correctly. Start from C. Everything starts from C major. C major having no sharps and no flats. Start from C. Build your sharps on the right side. Then build your flats on the left side. Then of course you'll be able to place your flats and sharps correctly. All right? I hope this explained the circle of fifths and tetrachords and everything else that you need now to build your circle of fifths on your own without a sheet of paper in front of you helping you cheat. You should be able to do this now on your own. Again, revisit this video as often as you need in order to understand this concept. I hope I've explained it a whole lot better with this presentation than I did in class, and I do ask for your pardon, but this is my way of making sure that you understand. Thanks so much, and have a great day.